Drew Moore, American College of Education, assignment number one, the leadership framework um, with uh, with respect for personal and professional goals. So with this assignment, I wanted to take some time to kind of videotape this and go through some of the items that I feel are the most important. So what I did was I filled in, I'll scroll through as we go. I did fill in each of the different entities. I know there were 8 different categories. I'm not going to highlight all of them, but I will highlight a couple that I feel are the most important, and then I will move on to each element of the paper and some of the concepts that I want to get across to the class of just what I'm trying to accomplish here. So as far as my strengths go, I would say personally, professionally, academically, just being assertive is probably the number one. I feel like I'm a pretty good listener. I ask good questions, and I'm generally fairly optimistic when it comes to everything, but professionally and even personally, even when things go wrong. Developmentally, definitely have to be a little more accepting, excuse me, of conflicting ideas. I would say more so personally, but definitely professionally, academically, there's a difference of opinion. Um, I don't get defensive about that. I definitely have to be a little more open as far as listening and working through those ideas. As much as I respect someone saying, coming up with differing opinions. As far as accomplishments go, just personally, I mean, I feel like being married for 7 years is an accomplishment for anyone. 2 children, 2 daughters. One is 2 years old, or excuse me, 4 years old, and the other one is 16 months. Um, so she'll be 2 very soon. Um, I would say, my wife is very supportive from a personal standpoint, and then just, with some of the things I've done professionally, some of the positions that I've held, I'll go through those again as I get to the paragraph work. And then just, achieving a master's about 7 years ago, and just recently getting the EDS. I feel very proud to be a part of this program with the 37 hours left in order to complete the EDD. As far as ways I make decisions, I would say I try to be as non-emotional as what I can. As hard as that is to do, I feel like professionally, academically, I'm very good at it. Personally, I really have to think about it, and then I make sure that I try to block out emotions. That way, all parties get the best of, so I consider everybody's interests when making decisions. So, kind of scroll through these. Um, and when it comes to how I learn best, I would say visually, many, many, many repetitions. And then as long as I'm writing things down, it helps me ask good questions. And then that goes through personally, professionally, academically. That's for everything. Um, Resources that I definitely need to use, especially with professionally, would be my professors, especially here at ACE, advisors, if you want to say mentors, colleagues who've been through the process before, um, experts in the field of study. That's going to be a big one as well. And then, I'd say the most important item here, I was really taken back by some of these questions, how I accept constructive feedback and how I offer it. Um, I would say I'm a little more defensive with my personal life, and that's something I need to improve on. Not so much professionally and academically. I'm definitely, with those 2 items, very coachable, um, very teachable. I buy into improvement. I buy into investigating how I can improve the situation. And when it comes to giving constructive feedback, I'm very respectful, very sensitive. I know it's hard to hear for a lot of people, but I want to get to the point, and I try to definitely prepare myself to listen. So at this point, I'm going to move myself into the actual. So the write-up itself, I call this the how. You'll understand what that means as we go through. So the LEAD, and that acronym for the framework, helps to acquire goals through the ACE program outcomes. Okay, so I'm not going to read this whole thing. I do have you see me look away. I do have some notes that's going to help me through this. So I do want to read this sentence. The purpose of this analysis is to create a plan of action to accomplish long and short-term goals as stated in the ACE admissions process. So what that means, what I'm going to try to do is to kind of go into a four-step process of how we're going to meet the program outcomes, but also meet goals and explain how we're going to do it. So first, initially, I'm going to reveal those goals. So I'm going to explain those. And that's what I explained in the actual admissions process. The next thing I'm going to do is reveal the LEAD framework, which I kind of sort of did already, but I'm going to go in a little bit more detail. And that's going to be reviewed and investigated. The third step of the plan of action will be to figure out the method in which the LEAD framework will help to specifically acquire program goals. So that's going to be called the how we're going to get this done in the doctoral process. And then the final step will be meshing the LEAD framework with the program outcomes that we talked about in discussion one. So my ultimate hope is to not only cast a vision for the future, but to create a vehicle that carries the specifics as to how the vision will be achieved. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and reveal those program goals in which I talked about in the admissions process, and just understand that each of these goals, wherever I go with this, as far as achieving the doctorate, wherever I take this thing, it has to do with service leadership. This is all about serving others. It's serving young people for the most part through leadership development. Very first thing is just administratively. There's a possibility I want to go into administration. I work at a large district, somewhere 25,000 students. We have about 1,400 teachers. I'd love to go into potentially assistant principal roles, potentially superintendent. So I know this can help me to reach that. The next thing is to potentially teach collegiately. Whether that's on campus, adjunct, online, and potentially even online full-time, and still keep the current job that I have, because there are some things that I love about my job that I'd love to continue to do without even changing anything. The other thing is, currently I work for a high-state university, and I'm a part-time strength and conditioning coach, and I've done that at the collegiate level as well. I feel like this leadership doctoral degree will aid with potential opportunities to do a little bit more with that in that specific field. So I'm scrolling through. You have a chance to read over this, but I wanted to make sure I hit on each and every single one of those goals. And the final one is just focused on the dissertation, because I know the dissertation it takes me where I want to go, and my focus is on drug testing and drug testing in schools, and specifically student athletes, because that's what we do. Not a lot of schools test in general, and my goal would be to not only encourage them to test student athletes, but it would be to encourage the school districts to test all students, and hopefully the information is overwhelming enough to get that done. So that's the ultimate goal. All right, the second part of, as far as revealing each of these four entities, is talking about the LEAD framework. And I know I just highlighted this, but what I did was I tried to find some of the similarities between personal, professional, and academic life, and some of the traits that I have currently, and some of the things that I need to work on. What I did was each of these areas I tried to highlight to a degree. So my strengths, I talked about this earlier: assertiveness, optimistic, open-minded. I feel like those are gonna pose well into leadership roles that I potentially want to get into. Developmentally, just accepting differing opinions. That's it. I need to get better at that, flat out. Accomplishments. My family, been married for 7 years, 2 daughters, very proud of that. My education, the EDS, the master's, very proud of that. I'm very excited to be a part of this doctoral process at ACE. And then positions held. I work for a high state university. I'm proud of that. The fact that I'm in this program, very proud of that. When it comes to being a collegiate football coach, I was an associate head coach I was a defensive coordinator at one point. I had the opportunity to be an interim head coach as well. So it was just something where we decided we want to start a family. So that was why I chose to get out of that business. And I definitely loved every second of it, but I also loved moving on. So I'm very proud of those things. As far as the way I make decisions, I'm going to scroll through this as well. Non-emotionally, as far as how I learn, visually, repetitions, many, many repetitions. I got to see those type of things in order to learn, and then the things that I need to do in order to get better would be for this doctoral process, I need to utilize the library. I need to utilize the learning centers, the writing centers, which could be instrumental in completing my degree. As far as giving feedback, accepting feedback, I kind of went through this a little bit. My big thing with accepting it, I need to be a little bit better in my personal life and how I accept it. Academically, professionally, I think that I'm pretty good with being coachable, being teachable, because I'm just excited to get better in general. And as far as giving it, I'm also very prepared to not only get to the point, but to listen to what others have to say. Okay, the third portion is talking about the LEAD framework and shaping it into a plan of action as to how the goals will be executed. So I'm going to use these items from the LEAD framework into figuring out how my goals are going to be taken care of. I talked about being optimistic, lack of utilizing. I try not to be an emotional decision maker. I feel like administratively, if I chose to go into that, that would take care of how that would get done. That would be a part of that. I also talked about time management, some things I got to get better. I feel like if I can work myself into making my time management a little bit better, especially with a family, that's going to go a long way for understanding. If I'm in a leadership role, I can truly, maybe relate to colleagues, relate to people that I am leading, because they have families, they have lives outside of work. That those things go a long way to potentially make those positions a little more. Okay, finally, with the LEAD framework, the final piece to this would be to complete the dissertation. And the idea that talked about, how I learn repetitions and taking notes and visually and practice, utilizing professors and classmates. I feel like this is going to go a long way in order to complete this dissertation, which is going to take clearly 2 years for the most part. The final part to the paper here talks about marrying the idea of the LEAD framework with the ACE program outcomes in order to help me reach my goals. So I stated my personal and professional goals. I revealed a synopsis of LEAD and explained how LEAD is going to help acquire these goals. So I'm going to read some of this because I don't want to mess it up. These goals will only be possible if candidates can find a way to combine useful information from LEAD to fulfill program outcomes. So the first two outcomes deal with committing to building relationships with school districts and communities, along with solving complex problems through practice of different types of theories and frameworks. So LEAD revealed my understanding that leading people involves personal relationships and a genuine care for others. My hope is that the EDD will teach best practice through a variety of leadership theories to follow in the future, along with already understanding that relationships are what everything is built upon. For the further outcomes, expect students to master critical and creative thinking through research methods. My professional goal is to impact multiple school districts. That drug testing an entire student body is essential in maximizing learning and the overall well-being for every student. So the dissertation process will create an avenue to achieve this goal. So overall, the LEAD program has really helped to revisit myself personally and professionally, which in turn is going to kind of help create a vehicle that will reveal how to fulfill program outcomes and ultimately achieve goals. Thank you for taking the time.